On today's episode, I'll discuss Ivan Demidov's positive first impression with NHL GMs and whether the Blackhawks could acquire Trevor Zegras.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a quick reminder to please hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I'm going to be having a lot of great Blackhawks content leading up to this year's NHL Draft. Free agency is right around the corner after that as well. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Won't cost you anything. 100% free and really does help yours truly. Last but certainly not least, got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. We just continue to inch closer and closer to the 2024 NHL Draft, now just 9 days away from things going down at the Sphere in Las Vegas next Friday. And late in yesterday's show, which I know was a lengthy one, to anyone who stayed tuned all the way until the end, I greatly appreciate you very much. But I did mention late in the episode yesterday that Ivan Demidov has arrived in the United States for the Gold Star Showcase in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the Blackhawks, GM Kyle Davidson, his right-hand man, Brian Campbell, and even CEO Danny Wirtz got an opportunity to finally meet the top Russian prospect in this year's draft and actually take Ivan out to dinner. And, we heard all the rumblings recently of the Blackhawks, the signs pointing towards them selecting Artem Levshinov after he got to meet with them at the scouting combine. The media, that is, the Blackhawks, met with him several times reportedly. They also were the only team to take Levshinov out to dinner, according to him, at the scouting combine. So at that point, there were a lot of, as I mentioned, signs pointing towards Artem Levshinov. Now, though, that the Blackhawks and other GMs have gotten to meet with Ivan Demidov, sounds like things could be back up in the air because he gave off a really sound first impression from multiple reports for numerous different reasons. First off, he speaks better English than I think anyone anticipated. He mentioned he's been learning English for the last year after his agent Dan Milstein mentioned that's something that's going to be important. Ivan asked him, hey, how do I get to be one of the top picks in the NHL draft? He said, Ivan, you got to learn English. He took that seriously. He speaks pretty good English, and just that dedication that, he wants to learn the language. It's just another confirmation that he is going to be coming to North America. And speaking on that front, it sounds like everything that we've been hearing that Demidov plans to come to the United States or Canada, wherever he winds up being selected, following the conclusion of the KHL season next year once his contract expires. Those have been the rumors. There have obviously always been concerns about Russian prospects and whether they are going to come over. In his interviews, he made it really clear that he does want to come to North America once his season ends next year. So that made general managers very happy to hear. He's also taller than what he's been listed at, which is 5'10" to 5'11", depending on where you look. He's, roughly about 6 foot, maybe even 6'1" now, according to him. The official measurements will come tomorrow, but he is clearly bigger than his listed height. So that's a little bit of an added bonus. There were some concerns about taking a 5'10" winger with the second or third overall pick in this year's draft. Now he's a little bit bigger, shows that he has grown as well over the last year, since a lot of scouts and analysts have kind of gotten eyes on him. So he's growing. There's a little bit more size and maybe even a little bit more runway there. But yeah, past the first meeting with flying colors. And we even heard Sean Shapiro say on the CHGO Blackhawks show yesterday that the Russian factor kind of goes away in a minute when you meet with Ivan Demidov. He's, again, speaking English. He's very confident. He's got a little bit of a swagger about himself. He's also reportedly in great shape, so he obviously takes his health very serious. A lot of good things coming out from the meetings with Ivan Demidov down in Florida yesterday. And another thing that I believe is notable, Blackhawks fans, is that CEO Danny Wirtz was there. That kind of tells me that the Blackhawks are still very much up in the air with the decision for the second overall pick. Even the CEO is going down to see what Ivan Demidov has to offer. It kind of feels like almost a stamp of approval type thing for the organization, potentially, if they were to want to go in that direction. But it just tells me that it's important enough of a meeting that Danny Wirtz has to be there. So feels like the Blackhawks are still toying, yo-yoing back and forth with their two options, as a lot of us fans still are. For those who have been watching the show for the past month or two now, you know then that I've been leaning Ivan Demidov. So I was very happy to hear that these meetings went very well and could have potentially changed how the Chicago Blackhawks were previously thinking with the second overall pick. Are they still now leaning Artem Levshinov? It feels like it could be more up in the air now than it was just a couple of days ago. Obviously, we don't know how the meeting with Demidov and the Blackhawks in particular went, but again, certainly a positive and notable feat that he came out of these meetings with flying colors. Won't be able to perform on the ice at the Gold Star Showcase, though, unfortunately, due to a lower body injury, which he did mention in an interview that he did with Scott Powers of The Athletic, that he believes is progressing really well and is going to be back skating here in a couple of weeks. And there's been a lot of confirmation that the injury isn't going to be anything significant. Even Kyle Davidson earlier on in the summer said he doesn't believe it's going to be anything significant. So no worries on that front. The Russian factor seems like it's kind of been eliminated based on these meetings. Wonder how this is going to change things for the Blackhawks, as they're down to just 9 days until they got to make their decision. Couldn't be more excited for the NHL draft to get underway next week, Blackhawks fans. I know I've asked this question several times, but it feels like people's opinions out there are still changing. So go and jump in the comment section down below. Let me know which way you are leaning at this point in time. Should the Blackhawks select Ivan Demidov with the second overall pick, or should they select big Belarusian defenseman Artem Levshinov out of Michigan State? But that's going to take care of my thoughts on Ivan Demidov's meeting with the Blackhawks and other NHL general managers down in Florida yesterday. Coming up in just a moment, I'll talk about some more Blackhawks trade targets that are hitting the rumor mill at the moment. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks at FanDuel real quick. The Stanley Cup playoffs are still going on. What a win by Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers last night. And oh yeah, baseball is back, about to be in full swing, about to take over whenever the Stanley Cup does come to a close. And FanDuel is your perfect place to bet on every single game, Game 6, and potentially even Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final going down over the weekend. And right now, if you're a new customer, make sure to go and sign up with FanDuel by checking out FanDuel.com/lockdown, because you'll get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed when you do. Yes, you heard me right. Whether your first bet is a win or loss, FanDuel will bless you with $150 worth of bonus bets in your account. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from the first goal scorer in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup to the game-winning goal scorer, even who's going to hit a home run across all the great ballparks. I'm going with Connor McDavid, anytime goal scorer in Game 6 back in Edmonton. You know the crowd's going to be rocking. You can tail along with me, and if you're not already a member at FanDuel, you can sign up by visiting FanDuel.com/lockdown, and you'll get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. Again, FanDuel.com/lockdown gets you $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed if you're not already signed up. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, even though the Stanley Cup playoffs have yet to wrap up, Edmonton sends the series back up into Canada, a long trip from Sunrise, Florida, up to Edmonton, Alberta for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final on Friday night. I cannot wait to watch that. But even though the season hasn't come to a close, we started to see some of the first offseason dominoes fall, if you will, earlier on today. Some notable moves as well, as Jacob Markstrom got traded from the Calgary Flames to the New Jersey Devils, a big piece for them. They've been trying to kind of solidify the goaltender position these last couple of seasons. Might have finally found their man in Jacob Markstrom. Barclay Goodrow also got claimed off of waivers by the San Jose Sharks from the New York Rangers. And then just a couple of hours ago, Pierre-Luc Dubois, this frickin' guy, is on the move once again after spending only 1 year. Was it 2 years? Yeah, I think it was actually 2 years with the Los Angeles Kings. Has been dealt to the Washington Capitals in a 1-for-1 swap in exchange for Darcy Kemper. Kind of an interesting move made there by the Capitals, but certainly a lot of upside possible with PLD, but a very long-term and cap-heavy contract that they're now going to have on their hands. But it feels like the NHL general managers aren't waiting any longer for the Stanley Cup to wrap up. They know that the draft and free agency, I mean, think about how crazy this could be. It could be a very long postseason, actually, if, let's say, things do go to Game 7. Game 6 is Friday night. Game 7 will be Monday. They'll give them the extra day. That means the NHL draft could go down 4 days after the season comes to a close, and then free agency is just 4 days after that. So, yeah, it's going to be a quick turnaround when the Stanley Cup comes to a close. General managers aren't waiting any longer, and we've heard that Hawks GM Kyle Davidson has been asking around, kicking the tires, trying to add a top 6 and maybe even another top 9 forward to their roster for this upcoming season. I also expect them to make some additions in free agency when that goes down. It's going to be a very active next couple of weeks for the Chicago Blackhawks. And just yesterday, the fourth period, run by David Pagnotta, of course, posted an article about the top 25 trade pieces to keep an eye on here over the summer. And the Blackhawks were all over it, reportedly linked to Mitch Marner and Marty Necas. I've already had those discussions here in the offseason. I even have episodes dedicated to those conversations. If you want to check them out, you can easily find them on my channel. For Marner, I think it's feasible. It's obviously going to be complex with his no movement clause. Seth Jones probably has to be part of that trade in particular, with Toronto wanting to shore up their defense. Jones has a no movement clause as well. There's a lot of pieces. And personally, I'm kind of a believer if they do want to go after Mitch Marner. He's not my favorite guy on the market in 2025, but certainly would be a quality top 6 piece to add. I would rather not give up assets to go and give him one. It's going to take a big contract regardless to go and get him. So I personally would just rather wait and take my gamble in free agency with Mitch Marner. For Marty Necas, I've discussed that many times. Carolina also, as of today, is reportedly received many deals from teams at this point, but hasn't gotten anything yet that would make them say yes. And I just continue to struggle to see the Blackhawks having the pieces to make a deal like that work. Like Philip Kurashev, I feel, because the Canes want pieces that'll help them get better now. And, Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, those guys just got pretty big deals. And I don't think the Blackhawks would want to eat salary to move them. I don't think Carolina would want to pay them their full AAV. Maybe a guy like Philip Kurashev or Lucas Reichel could get thrown in there, but when the Canes were asking for Elias Pettersson from Vancouver as part of the exchange for Marty Necas, that makes you think that might not even be enough, even if you throw in the number 18 overall pick. And even at that point in time, I don't know if I'd be willing to give Necas the 6.5 to 7.5, probably at least $7 million for 6 years, if that's potentially what he wants. He wants to be a star. He wants a bigger role. Wouldn't be surprised if he wanted a bigger long-term contract as well. And I don't know if Kyle Davidson would give those to him. So I feel like Necas and Marner are long shots for the Blackhawks here this summer. However, there were 3 other names mentioned that the Blackhawks were linked to that I do think are interesting, most notably Trevor Zegras from the Anaheim Ducks, along with Oliver Wahlstrom and Jacob Chychrun. And for Zegras, 9th overall pick back in the 2019 NHL draft when the Blackhawks selected Kirby Dach 3rd overall. Zegras was kind of in the mix for that pick, but not really. It seemed like it was Bowen Byram, Alex Turcotte, and Kirby Dach was the one to me who made sense because of his size and power forward mold. It's been something the Blackhawks, I think, have needed in their prospect pool and in their lineup for quite a while now. So that's why I personally didn't have a problem with the pick at the time. Zegras, had a really promising start to his career, right? Back-to-back 60-point campaigns in his first 2 seasons as a full-time NHLer, had 23 goals and 42 assists for 64 points in 81 games as a 21-year-old 2 seasons ago. However, this past season got completely derailed for him due to injury. Didn't look like the same guy on the ice and only wound up with 15.6 goals and 9 assists in 31 games. But he just turned 23 back in March. There's obviously a lot of creative playmaking upside there. And, scoring 20 goals twice at 21 and 22 years of age, like that's nothing to bat an eye at. There's certainly a lot of runway there still with Trevor Zegras, but there have been some rumors of potentially a new start could be the best thing for him. And with Anaheim's deep prospect pool, they can kind of afford to do that if the asking price is right, considering all the talent that they have. However, Zegras does have 2 years left on his current deal at $5.75 million. That is a pretty hefty price to pay if he's not able to get back to that top level. But there is control there. He still will only be an RFA with arbitration rights when that deal comes to a close. So that control, I think, is going to be intriguing for other teams and maybe even the Blackhawks, even though that $5.75 million price tag is a bit much. The real kicker here is, Zegras is the type of player, he has the type of skill, the way he thinks the game, thinking about that potential along with Connor Bedard and the offensive-minded forward prospects like a Nazar, like an Oliver Moore that the Hawks have accumulated. It's obviously intriguing, and I think Kyle Davidson absolutely has to kick the tires. I'm sure he probably has. The tough part is, how do you exactly get a deal to work? Because these two teams are basically in the exact same spot at the bottom of the standings. We know that the Ducks have picks and they have prospects. They probably want players that can help make them better and win more games next year so they can get out of rebuilding. And it's kind of like the same thing with Carolina. Like, I don't know if the Blackhawks want to trade Dickinson or Foligno because they are good culture guys and they just sign them. And I doubt Anaheim would want to pay them those price tags. It's like, what could the Blackhawks possibly offer to Anaheim that's going to get their rocks up, if you will, for a lack of a better term? Philip Kurashev and Connor Murphy, Andreas Athanasiou, those aren't going to probably be intriguing enough pieces to go and acquire Trevor Zegras. So I just kind of have a hard time seeing a deal working between those two sides for a player like Trevor Zegras, considering where both of the franchises are at. But that's just my opinion. Again, I expect Kyle Davidson to go and see what the asking price is. Don't know if he'll be able to fill it. Next up, though, Oliver Wahlstrom, an interesting one here, was the 11th overall pick back in 2018, turned 24 years old a couple of days ago, got good size, 6'2", a 205-pound winger, was drafted 11th overall because of his special goal-scoring abilities. However, that really hasn't translated so far in his NHL career. You do have to wonder, though, how much of that is because he's played in New York, which has never been offensive-minded. Even though Barry Trotz is gone, their offense has never been the strength of that team since he's been there. He's also been utilized in mostly a bottom six role and has never even had 13 minutes per game in a season so far. So not much of an opportunity, not a great system for him. Led to only 6 points, 2 goals and 4 assists in 32 games for the Islanders. This past season, he had 16 points in 35 games the year prior, 20 points in each of the seasons before that. But you do have to wonder how kind of these past seasons have affected him. And he certainly has capped upside because he's never going to be a good playmaker. His best offensive attribute is the goal scoring ability. So yeah, there's kind of some concerns about what is Oliver Wahlstrom at this point now that he is 24 years old. However, in the article by the fourth period, they mentioned that he could potentially be a throw-in piece along with a bad contract that another club could take on. And when diving into the Islanders cap friendly, and I will very much miss cap friendly, it is like my go-to for everything. The Washington Capitals had to go and take it from us, god damn it. When diving into cap friendly and looking at what the Islanders have to offer, there's only a couple of players that really make sense to me. However, I did kind of nail the Blackhawks taking on Anthony Beauvillier's contract. It just wound up coming from the Vancouver Canucks instead of the New York Islanders. A couple of summers ago, I think, is when that happened. So Anthony Beauvillier did wind his way to Chicago. So maybe, I can go 2 for 2 in these Islanders cap casualty predictions. JG Pageau is really the only one that makes sense to me. Casey Cizikas potentially, but he's on a 3-year deal. I don't know if Kyle Davidson would want to take on that contract, and I don't know if Wahlstrom exactly is enticing enough to go and make a move like that to pay Cizikas $2.5 million over 3 years. JG Pageau, though, I kind of think shapes up to be a little bit of a perfect top 9 ad that Kyle Davidson wants to add here this summer. I don't think he's the top 6 piece, but I think he could be a potential third line guy that could help this offense be better next year. 33 points, 11 goals, and 22 assists in 82 games this past season, again, with the New York Islanders. But he's been a consistent 30 to 40 point guy, even as he's gotten into his 30s. He does have a $5 million AAV, but it's only over the next 2 years, and I don't think that's the end of the world. Still, I don't know if that's a contract that the Blackhawks would just want to take on for Oliver Wahlstrom, but those are 2 pieces that could potentially help make this team better next year. And maybe the Blackhawks see something with Wahlstrom. Maybe they want to give him an opportunity here in Chicago. So that could be a deal that does make sense. I think that's one to keep an eye out for. The last guy mentioned was Jakob Chychrun, 16th overall pick himself back in the 2016 NHL draft. And believe it or not, even though it feels like he's been in the NHL for a decade now, which he almost has been, which is crazy. He only turned 26 years old back in March, which kind of blew my mind a little bit. But he's a 6'2", 220-pound defenseman coming off a year in which he had 41 points, 14 goals, and 27 assists in 82 games this past season for the Ottawa Senators. Adding those 14 goals to the Blackhawks blue line certainly would be much needed. They need more offense out of their defensemen. And he's a guy who's played maybe not 1A minutes, but 1B top pairing minutes over the last 5 to 6 years from back when he was in Arizona. I do think he would be a little bit of a wonky fit. His offense would be nice, but defensively, still a little bit of a question mark. Like, he's not a staple lockdown defensive defenseman, despite playing a top pairing role. He puts up good analytics, but it's usually because of his offense. Has 1 year left on his current contract at $4.6 million. The Senators supposedly, though, want scoring help up front, a number 1 goaltender, or a right-handed defenseman. Well, we know we can't give them the goaltender. If we trade Peter Mrazek, we're literally toast. Scoring help up front, you want Andreas Athanasiou, you want Philip Kurashev. I don't even know if that would do it. Connor Murphy as the right-handed defenseman, like, I don't even think that would be enough to make the Senators want to trade a guy like Jakob Chychrun who could help them. So that one kind of seems a little bit far-fetched to me as well. But again, I do like hearing that the Blackhawks are linked to these players. General manager Kyle Davidson is at least checking in on their availability and their asking price. He's making a concerted effort to do everything in his power to make this team better next year without spending top dollar, which they're just 1 year too early to be doing that. I absolutely understand, but I like to hear this. I think, Trevor Zegras is a long shot. Chychrun's a long shot. I mentioned Natchez and Marner are long shots. The Wahlstrom-Pageau deal, I think there could be potentially something there. I don't know if any of these trades wind up going down, but it's always promising to hear that the Blackhawks are interested in moves like this. It's another reminder that better things are to come, better days are to come for this organization. More intriguing pieces, more help is on the way for Connor Bedard and these young kids, and they better be, because this fan base, they deserve better for all they've watched these past couple of years. A lot of bad hockey. Kyle Davidson said it's the time to get this team better. I sure hope they accomplish that, and to do so, that means they're going to have to be active all summer long. So There are my thoughts on some of the latest Blackhawks trade rumors surrounding some players in particular. And again, make sure you go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. If there are more rumors about the Blackhawks in a certain player, I'll be sure to dive into that here on the show and share my full reaction. Subscribing to the channel, 100% free, won't cost you anything. Goes a long way for yours truly. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up on today's show, I still have to get into Ryder Ritchie's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. But first, I got to talk to you all about Policygenius. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of life's greatest unknowns. And Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace and makes choosing the right policy for your family both quick and easy. Because with Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. And some options are even 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius is also the country's leading insurance marketplace that helps save you both time and money so that you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting right here today. Go and talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process right by your side, step by step, comparing quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to get you the best and lowest price. So go and check life insurance off of your to-do list right now with Policygenius. Head on over to policygenius.com, or you can also simply go and click the link down in the description to get your free life insurance quotes today and to see how much that you could be saving. Again, that's policygenius.com. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Reminder, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much. And to also go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, segment 3, time to get into my next 2024 NHL draft profile here on the show. Only got a couple left to get into before I dive into my 2024 NHL draft rankings. I'll also be having a full mock draft for the first round coming out next week. Make sure to subscribe to the channel again to stay tuned for all of those latest episodes and to catch them as soon as they're uploaded. And if there is a player in particular that you want to hear about in this year's draft, I've covered most of the notables at this point. Can easily find all of those episodes on my channel under the 2024 NHL Draft Profile playlist. Next on deck here today, though, is none other than Ryder Ritchie, a 6 foot, 175-pound forward who's still 17 years old, one of the youngest players in this draft class, not going to turn 18 until August, so actually just a few weeks removed from being part of the 2025 draft class. And he didn't put up the most impressive numbers this year with 44 points, 19 goals, and 25 assists in 47 WHL games for the Prince Albert Raiders, especially when you consider he had 55 points, 20 goals, and 35 assists in 61 games the year prior. But a lot of that was because he dealt with a lower body injury that kept him off the ice for some time, only wound up playing in 47 games compared to 61 the year prior. Did almost match his season's goal total from the year before, though, when he was voted the best rookie in the WHL. And it also hurts that Prince Albert has been a rebuilding club in the WHL these last couple of years, as we knew when Nolan Allen was the captain there a few seasons ago. It's been a tough couple of years for them, and they haven't been very offensive minded. So it's been a little bit of a struggle for Ryder Ritchie, but he's been one of the head honchos the past couple of seasons. And fortunately for them, they have some top selections in this year's draft. So more help is coming on the way for Ryder Ritchie, assuming that he's going back to the WHL, the more than likely option for him next season. However, one thing that is also notable about his game is that in some of the bigger moments, the World Juniors, the Alinka Gretzky tournament, he's put up some really good numbers and had some worthwhile showings. 8 points in 7 games 4 goals and 4 assists in 7 games for Team Canada at the U18 World Juniors this past winter, and also had 9 points in 5 games for Canada at the Hlinka Gretzky Cup. It's also worth mentioning that he has a lineage of NHLers. His uncle and father were both in the NHL, and he actually grew up in Sweden. His dad was playing pro hockey over in Sweden when Ryder was born, so kind of has some Swiss roots, and actually, I believe played some games for or for Sweden, not Switzerland, Sweden, excuse me, when he was growing up. But wound up playing for Team Canada, wound up representing them at the World Juniors, and a good decision for him as he had a rather strong showing there. As far as the rankings go for Ryder Ritchie, 22nd by Elite Prospects, 21st by Bob McKenzie, 32nd by Craig Button, 37th by Tony Ferrari, 26th by McKean's Hockey, 37th by Chris Peters, 34th by Daily Faceoff, 27th by Sportsnet, 32nd by Dobber Prospects. So outside of the top 20, according to everyone, I do believe Ritchie is out of the picture for the Blackhawks at number 18. However, that doesn't mean I shouldn't talk about him on the show, as he could be an option for them at number 34, as evident by some of these rankings. 32nd by Craig Button, 37th by Chris Peters, 34th by Daily Faceoff, 37th by Tony Ferrari. Certainly not crazy to think that Ryder Ritchie could slip all the way to the Hawks with the second pick in the second round, and he even made it all the way to number 32 in the Locked On NHL mock draft. But diving into his strengths and weaknesses, there's a lot to like about Ryder Ritchie. A very well-rounded offensive game, although I do think his shot is going to be his best attribute at the next level. Really impressive power play shooter. Scored a lot of goals on the man advantage this past season from both dots, which I like to see, and in a plethora of different shots. You know, some guys kind of have their niche spot that they go to. A lot of guys love going glove high just because it's nasty. But Ryder Ritchie has the full arsenal. He'll beat you a low blocker. He'll beat you 5-hole through a screen from the right dot. He'll go glove high. He can score with his wrister in many different ways and has some pretty good accuracy to pick all of those spots, and a lot of good power behind his shot as well. And I think it's notable that he did grow 2 inches this past year. So is starting to get into that frame a little bit more, was kind of an undersized forward going into the year, and was kind of in the same breath as Berkeley Catton, believe it or not, going into the start of the year. But Catton had a phenomenal season, whereas Ritchie was kind of plagued by injuries and didn't put up the numbers maybe that some expected him to. So that's kind of why he's fallen back in the rankings here a little bit, but is growing, continues to grow, could give NHL general managers more confidence that size could be on his side at the next level. He's also a pretty good puck carrier. Good deking abilities. I don't know if he's going to be like an elite dangler at the next level. I don't know if he's going to be pulling off anything disgusting, but for a kid who also can skate at a high speed, very mobile, very good crossovers to move in transition. It's the full arsenal of offensive skills here for Ryder Ritchie. I do think the shot, though, is his biggest asset. And he also has been capable, according to different articles from scouts that I've read, capable of being a workhorse on the defensive side of things when he wants to. And that's kind of one of the biggest weaknesses as we transition there for Ritchie, just the all-in-all consistency. Some games he looks like a world beater, and again, he can clearly turn it on like we saw for when he was representing Canada, both at the Hlinka Gretzky and the World Juniors. But sometimes, you know, there isn't the same effort level game in and game out. There also are some worries about what can he do for you away from the puck. If there are those consistency issues. So those are things he's certainly going to need to work on, but not atypical, as I've said time and time again on this show, for a kid who's only 17 years old. But there's a lot of runway, a lot of upside there for Ryder Ritchie. And as far as my projection, I do see him being a middle six NHL winger at the next level. I do see him being a guy that's going to make it because of his shot and because of the way that he can skate. He's growing into his frame a little bit more. is confident with the puck on his stick as well. And he's also very young. Like, there's a lot of time for him compared to some of these other prospects. So because of that, I think someone's going to be intrigued enough to ultimately take him in the first round, probably between number 26 and 32 is what I would have to guess. But there is a chance that he could possibly fall to the Blackhawks at number 34. I saw one comparison out there saying that Ryder Ritchie reminds them of Connor Garland. I think that's a good one. He also kind of reminds me of Brian Rust. Again, maybe not a true top six, more of a middle six type of guy, but a good goal scorer, a guy who could put up, 25 goals, 30 assists, 50 to 55 points. I see that certainly in the cards for Ryder Ritchie, and there could even be more upside there if he continues to grow with his skating. There's a lot to like about this kid. If he's available at number 34, I think he's someone that the Blackhawks could have penciled in because of his skill game. A little bit undersized, but again, still growing and plays with a lot of speed. It's kind of the mold that I think Kyle Davidson would like to add. So that's going to take care of Ryder Ritchie's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. Let me know in the comment section down below if he's someone you would like to see the Blackhawks take at number 34 if he fell out of the first round. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again, everyone, for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Find me on X at JackBushman2. You can also check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, stay safe, stay cool as it remains hot here in the Chicagoland area. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.